Okay, you're with us here on Mid-Cap Radar. It's 1:30 p.m. this Wednesday afternoon. The market is up about, 17, 18 odd points, and things are looking pretty steady. We've got, a scattered kind of action across the board. So names like DHFL, etc., are sort of seeing some buying. I think Indiabulls Housing, IndusInd Bank, some of these troubled financial names are seeing some action, and we'll sort of focus back on these in a bit with our colleagues who've been reporting on this. Ritu, for example, put that story out on DHFL, and of course we'll focus on that in just a bit. But the broader market, there isn't very much by way of action. It's almost like a holding operation all the way going into the budget, which is now on Friday. So don't expect fireworks one way or the other, up or down. I guess the direction becomes clear only with what the budget is able to do to revive some sentiment and provide some incentive to get back in. Advanced decline, though, is still positive. 1128 higher, 945 stocks are lower. So, I mean, it's not a bad-looking market, especially given the situation we are in. Sumit, afternoon.
Hi, Prashant. Good afternoon to you as well. Like you said, not a bad looking screen for the moment, but let's get started. These are our top stories. Market is choppy in trade. Crude beneficiaries like oil refiners, paint and aviation stocks have risen. Indiabulls Housing is the top Nifty gainer. Mid-cap index outperforms.
Bharat Forge gets a boost as North America truck orders see 25% month-on-month improvement in the month of June. Shares of Aurobindo Pharma sulk after CNBC-TV18 excesses. US FDA's warning letter to Unit 11 highlighting failure to report impurities and inadequate investigations into poor equipment maintenance.
Cheer for infra companies as NHAI, confident of meeting the target of awarding 6,000 kilometers in FY20, adds that NHAI has crossed 2 stages of land acquisition and floated bids for 3,000 kilometers.
CNBC-TV18 exclusively accesses details on PM Modi's meeting with India Inc. Key recommendation is to allow 1% of GDP as additional spending on infrastructure. Kotak Mutual Fund's Nilesh Shah says the delegation impressed the need for a government to take risks in favor of promoting growth.
And slowdown cues continue to haunt India. June services PMI slips into contraction terrain, coming in at 49.6 compared to a reading of 50.2 just last month.
Okay, Ashwini is with us, so let's bring him in at 1:30 as always for some trades. Ashwini, afternoon. What would you do?
See, for the moment, financials are looking at some amount of short covering. I think yesterday some people took home shorts and they look like they are getting covered. So my sense is that Nifty still, as long as 11,900 holds on, we should look at more upside. But the large private banks, if they start to rev up, then it's possible that we have an excursion towards 12,000, 12,050. So individual stocks, ICICI Bank has now moved from the red to the green. So that's a buy with a stop of 430, target of 455. BOB is a buy with a stop of 120, target of 128. And Axis Bank is a buy with a stop of 800, target of 825.
Ashwini, fair enough, these are trades, but how do you think the budget is likely to behave around and on the day of the budget?
See, basically budget excitement was when there were taxes which could be tinkered around and customs duty and this and that. Now a lot of that excitement is over because the taxes are out. So my sense would be that a few policy statements, etc., a lot happens outside the budget. So basically 12,000, 12,050 should happen, and post that you come back to the fundamentals and earnings and all of that. I don't think budgets have that sort of impact that they used to have.
Oh, certainly. Absolutely. Ashwini, just a quick word on Piramal. Would you consider sort of trading this one? It's back above the 2,000 rupee level.
Here the support or rather resistance is the 200-day moving average, which is 2300. So yes, you can have a rally theoretically right up to that level, but trying to buy something which is in a downtrend in a market where lots of other things are in an uptrend is not a very sensible move, but theoretically we can move towards a level of 2300.
All right, Ashwini, thanks very much for joining in with your afternoon trades. We were speaking about the budget, and in fact, let's get in some more. There's just 48 hours to go, and CNBC-TV18 learns that members of India Inc. and prominent economists have made some budget recommendations to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Anshu Sharma broke that story earlier this morning, and she joins in now with the key recommendations to the PMO. Anshu.
On June 22nd, Prime Minister Narendra Modi met about 40 economists and industrialists just ahead of the budget. The idea was to take actionable ideas on macroeconomy, employment, agriculture, water resources, health and education sectors. We here at CNBC-TV18 exclusively learn that on macroeconomy, some of the ideas suggested were to allow 1% of GDP as additional fiscal spending exceeding the current FRBM target, which could be tied to specific infrastructure priorities. The group on macroeconomy also suggested to raise capital via asset recycling and suggested a target of $100 billion in 3 to 5 years. Assets identified for recycling includes roads, ports, airports, transmission lines, electricity licenses, oil and gas pipelines. On banking and insurance, key suggestions on public sector banks were to corporatize, consolidate the public sector banks, and suggestion was also to bring government stake down to 51% if not privatized by the private sector. Recapitalization of PSBs based on merit was highlighted through excess RBI capital if there's any available. Suggestion on insurance was to increase FDI, foreign direct investment, to 100%. Employment was another issue which was discussed at length, and some ideas that were given were to incentivize labor-intensive industries like garments and light engineering in North India to have a system of interest-free GST loan on incremental tax payment by SMEs. Also to bring MSMEs under the GST net, reduction of employee contribution to EPFO, ESI, and much wanted corporate tax concessions based on number of employees. Group of invited experts also suggested to automatically allow non-irrigated farmland for industrial purposes, and it also suggested that there is a need to bring a dedicated bankruptcy code for the real estate sector, as well as increase in floor space index to encourage constructions. Some prominent faces which were part of the meeting included N. Chandrasekaran of Tata Sons, TV Narendran of Tata Steel, Anil Agrawal of Vedanta, Sanjeev Puri of ITC, Nilesh Shah of Kotak Mahindra AMC, and Sanjay Nair of KKR India, Neelkant Mishra from Credit Suisse, Sajid Chinoy of JP Morgan, Samiran Chakrabarti, Citibank, Soumya Kanti Ghosh of SBI. Prime Minister told the invitees that government will see how many of these ideas can be incorporated in the budget, but government can always implement policies and suggestions beyond budget as well. Back to you.
Anshu, thanks very much for that. Earlier, we also spoke with Nilesh, Managing Director at Kotak Mahindra Asset Management Company, who actually was part of the delegation which met with the Prime Minister. He gave his input on the meeting and what really came out of it, and his impressions of, what is likely.
Growth is the solution for India's most of the problem. Second, if you want to pursue the path of growth, we have to provide capital, both debt and equity. If your NBFCs are not lending, if your PSU banks are not lending, and only few private sector banks are doing heavy lifting, the growth is never going to happen. Third, there is a risk aversion today. Risk aversions due to various things. You have to accept genuine failure. If there is a malafide intention, definitely go after it. No one is saying that we have to pardon criminals, but at the same time, we have to accept that in businesses, genuine failure will occur, and we have to live with it. I think that was the beautiful summation for the situation which India is facing today, and I'm equally hopeful that Prime Minister and his team will do the necessary.
All right, and we just have 2 days to go to find out what actually comes through in the budget. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more on the market, lots more stock-specific action lined up next. Stay tuned.